Here. This is where Tennessee ranks nationally going into this weekend, so that was before yesterday's game. Number one, per game average, only allowing 176 yards per game. But my question is, are the Vols truly battle-tested? And I ask that because, let's flip to the next graphic here if we could. All right, you see Oklahoma and NC State. Points per game, rush yards per attempt. It's all pretty bad. And what I did was I just took the ballpark of the two of them and went and looked at last week's top 133 ranking all the schools. Yeah, in terms of points per game, they're about 80th. Rush yards per game, they're both about 100th, about 115th in rush yards per attempt. Now, granted, Tennessee played a role in that, but they've each played like 4 other games as well, and they look pretty bad on offense. So my question, Vince, has Tennessee's defense, as good as it looks, and I think it is good, has it truly been tested yet?
I don't think so. But that doesn't, to your point, that doesn't mean they're not still elite and they won't stand up to those challenges. The challenge has not come yet. So even Arkansas going into the weekend was 4th in passing in the SEC. Mm-hmm. People maybe wouldn't think of that just looking at that Auburn game. That will be, I think, the best test. And there's obviously some big boy tests coming up, especially when you see what Alabama and Georgia did. Yeah. But to answer your question, no, they have not been challenged as of yet.
No, not at all.
You guys agree?
Yeah, not at all. They haven't been challenged yet. NC State is a really poorly coached offense, and they don't have a quarterback that can fit that system. They wouldn't change what they needed to work around Grayson McCall. So now,
for people who say, well, McCall's out, they look the same with him.
He wasn't very good. They probably need to bench him anyway. At that point, Oklahoma, Brent Venables is a train wreck as far as how he handles the offensive side of the football. I don't think trying to marry Josh Heupel's system and Seth Luttrell's system is working for them offensively whatsoever. But I do agree with Vince. I think Arkansas is going to test you. Bobby Petrino is a good coach. Taylor Green has figured out how to throw the football.
You got a great running back too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yesterday, going into those games, Oklahoma ranked dead last in the SEC in offense. NC State ranked dead last in offense in the ACC. The only reason why was because Florida State put up another stinker last night against SMU, and that propelled them. So you're facing the worst offense thus far and the penultimate worst offense in all of the ACC. But to Vince's point, as you pointed out as well, Will, number 4 offense, they're going to test Tennessee. That doesn't take away the flowers of the eliteness.
Right. Yeah.
But have they been tested? To answer your question, they haven't. And I think that first test is going to come against
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
And I'll still give them a ton of credit for going to Oklahoma and winning. I like the fact that they went out there. That's not an easy place to play. I don't care how bad the offense is. I like the way they handled the game. We can say they got too conservative. Personally, I like the fact it's showing me that Josh Heupel says, I can win another way. I looked at Auburn give that game away yesterday, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is why you didn't have Nico back to pass.
There it is.
This is why you were smart not to let Brent Venables dial something up, because as bad as they are on offense, I think he's that sharp on defense. Their defense looks good to me. So I think it's a good win. I still believe in the defense. I just don't know if it's as good as what we've seen so far because of who they've played. I mean, you can still be elite and give up more than 176 yards a game.
They're at least very good, but we won't know if they're elite until you get to Bama, Georgia, because how many elite teams are there in college football right now, right?
And then let's turn that around. So Bama and Georgia's defense is elite. One of them gave up 41, one of them gave up 34. So it's how you define elite. Even your elite defenses now give up points.
They do.
Right.
They give up points time or two.
I just want to share this before we get too far removed from it. You just made an excellent point. For anybody out there who said, well, the Oklahoma game, conservative, 25-15. If you want any indication what might have happened had Tennessee continued to push the accelerator, go watch the 4th quarter of yesterday's Auburn-Oklahoma game. That was very eerily similar to what Tennessee was getting baited into, but then they didn't take the bait. That 4th quarter, fantastic point.
Well, I think within what they haven't seen are individual aspects like the running quarterback. They really have not dealt with that till late. Michael Hawkins against Oklahoma.
Right.
They're gonna see that first test against Taylor Green, and then what Jalen Milroe is able to do. That's on another level of. I mean, everyone's gonna have trouble with that. And then the last really good quarterback that Tennessee played was Carson Beck last year. So that's another box to be checked. Again, I'm not saying that Tennessee's not up to the challenge, but it's something still unknown about this year's defense.
Well, and here's the thing about Michael Hawkins. You can't really call him dual threat. He's a one threat. He's a leg threat. He's not a great threat with his arms. You haven't seen a guy who can get yards through the air and get yards with his leg, which you will get at Arkansas.
Right.
You're going to have a guy who can do a little bit of both. And even though we'll talk about the Arkansas game and the matchup and everything later, but I do think that's going to be a better test for you. Now, the interesting thing is if they go in and shut down Arkansas, do we come back the next week and say, but have they really been tested yet?
85 Bears at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all in. All right. You got something to throw in?
No, I watched every snap of that Auburn-Oklahoma game yesterday, and to your point about him not being a dual threat, Michael Hawkins, there was a point in time where I watched in the fourth quarter, and I'm not too high with the higher lows and lows, where I went, you might want to consider putting Jackson Arnold back in this game.
Yes, I
and
agree.
guess what? He wins that game, and everybody in Oklahoma is like, yeah, it's now time for the new. That team is handcuffed.
The defense won that game.
That pick six, and Auburn wins.
Yeah, it was Jordan Rogers. Are we seeing a star being born? No, you're not.
No, not at all.
No.
Winning's a great deodorant, right? That's
Yeah.
what John Madden
Bingo.
used to say.
Amazing. All right. When we come back, Nico Iamaleava is still high on the Heisman. Am I jumping in? Nope, that's right. Nico Iamaleava is still high on the Heisman odds list, but is one of his teammates the guy who should be getting the Heisman hype? Come on back on the Sports Source.